Leotard wedgies. They are not fun, but there are some things that you can do to avoid them. That's what we're going to be talking about today for Tricky Thursday. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Trisha. I call myself your pattern nerd friend. I am the owner of Creative Costume Academy. This is my little corner on the internet. Thank you for being here. I'm so glad. Before we get into it, please hit that subscribe button to hit the like if you love watching these videos and turn on those notifications. It really does help me and my channel and help me to keep showing up and giving you the good stuff that I hope you think is good stuff. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about leotard wedgies. Like this, or like this. It's not cute, right? And I guarantee you that these ladies, it was not the look that they were going for. And it's not just leotards, right? It could happen in a brief or a bathing suit or anything like that. Bodysuit. How do we prevent it? Why does it happen? What can be done to avoid the wedgie, right? Well, there's a couple of different things. And you know what's funny is I learned about these things. So just for those of you who don't know my background, the reason it is Creative Costume Academy is because I have a 20+ year-long career making costumes for the entertainment industry, which include costumes for, say, Cirque du Soleil costumes. I lived for 11 years in Las Vegas, working on some of the biggest shows on the strip and working a lot with acrobats and gymnasts. So this was a constant battle that we came up against, and I learned some tricks on how to combat it. And it comes down to a couple of different things. So it comes down to the shape of the leg line. And I'm gonna show you on a pattern that I have, a leotard pattern that I have, what that difference looks like. So that is one thing that can cause or help or hinder this situation from happening. The other thing is the elastic and how tight it is in that leg line and how much it will hold to the leg. So that's another thing that can help or hurt this situation from happening. The other factors that can come in that can help you avoid this from riding up is if you are a dancer. I think there are some regulations with, definitely swimmers, obviously, and gymnasts where you can't wear tights, like fishnets. A lot of times performers, dancers will wear fishnets, and that will also help. It just gives the fabric of the leotard or the brief something to hold on to besides our skin, because our skin is slippery and slidey, and if it's especially made out of a slippery like spandex material, it just, it's really hard to hold that in place. So tights can definitely help not have that ride up. And the other thing that I kind of saw on the internet when I was Googling, I wanted to find those lovely images that I shared with you, that people have used double stick tape or, body glue or hairspray, something to adhere to the skin of your behind so that the fabric will have something to grab to, give it some more friction to grab onto. I have not personally experienced that or seen that done with the performers that I worked with, but I totally get it. I can see how it could go. The reason this came up, and I thought this would be a good thing to share, is I am preparing to teach a couple of classes at the Sewing and Stitchery Expo. I've been referring to it as the Sew Expo in Puyallup, Washington, which I'm very excited to be teaching these classes. I have not actually gotten to attend this event, but it is one that I have had my eye on for a long time. I thought that I won't be really teaching pattern making so much, which is usually my classes that I teach, but I wanted to infuse some of my costume knowledge that I thought would maybe be different than some of the other classes that were being taught at Sew Expo. And if you are watching this live, you can still come and join us. It will be in Puyallup, Washington, and it is February 29th through March 3rd of 2024. You don't have to go to every day. You can sign up for single day passes and check out my classes. So I'm prepping for these classes. Two of the classes that I'm going to be teaching, one of them is going to be on a leotard. So I have a leotard pattern, and that's the pattern I'm actually going to show you how the leg line and the line of the leg line could really help or hurt with this whole riding up situation. And the other one I'm teaching is on a brief, or in other words, like a panty or a swim bottom that you might want to use. And a lot of these are used in, you know, dance wear. You can use it like under a big skirt if you are into, say, swing dancing and stuff like that, where you're twirling around. You don't want your undies to be hanging out. So briefs are really handy, but the thing that I'm sharing about that brief especially is how to sew your elastics in, and how I was taught to sew my elastics in for exactly preventing what we're talking about today. So those briefs that we're gonna be sewing at Sew Expo, I think it's called Brief Brilliance is the name of that class. So these are the little briefs, and they're great, you know, if they're great to have for extra coverage, for wearing under see-through pants, you know, if you're gonna get fancy with some of your sewing. The main thing is with this sewing, and we'll start here with the leg elastics. So I saw a lot of comments online about making tighter leg elastics, and tighter leg elastics will help. And a lot of times when you are given instructions on how to sew elastics into a brief or a leotard, they tell you to sew the elastic in a circle, quarter it, you know, divide that elastic circle into 4, and then divide the leg hole that you're sewing this into 4, and you equally disperse the elastic into the leg hole. And that's fine if you are just wandering around, but if you are doing gymnastics and flying around, you're on stage, everybody's looking at you, and you are not able to adjust if, say, your suit ends up riding up, like because you're on stage or you're in a competition. I think they actually deduct in like Olympics gymnastics if you adjust your costume. So that might not be an option for you. And if you're like doing something else, you're in the middle of a performance, you're not gonna be picking a wedgie out. That's not how I learned. And then there's the other way where you could, you know, put your elastics in with your serger, where you're evenly feeding it, stretching it a little bit. And yeah, that works fine. But for this, how I learned, and this is what I'll be teaching in my class, is you can see right here on this panty, on this brief rather, I call it a brief, but it's a little bit flatter in the front because we're not hugging anything in the front. There's not much there to hug, right? I mean, you could, but in the back, notice how it's super gathered, because you need to cup the booty, right? We gotta cup the booty. I have even gone so far as, in some circumstances, depending on the fabric that I'm using, if it's a fabric that isn't super stretchy, like there was this leathery kind of stretch leather that I had to use for these costumes at one point. We actually put a dart, like a butt dart in the back. But if you're using spandex or 4-way stretch, you're not likely gonna need a dart back there. But if you have no elastic at all, it just stands away from the booty because it's a curve. We are not flat 2D figures. We are curvy figures, especially in the derriere. How I was taught to put in elastics for costuming is that we take out, you always want your elastic to be slightly smaller than the leg hole that you're putting it into. So I do reduce that front elastic slightly, so it's not gonna get all wiggly and warp and like stand away from the body. We don't want that. So it is gonna hug it in slightly, but the back elastic is taken in a lot more than the front elastic. So yes, we're tightening the elastic, but we're tightening it mostly in the back so that it will hug the booty. That is my one tip for you. Aren't these cute? I made these as a sample so that I could show my class and knew what I was gonna be teaching about, but I'm totally wearing these. Like, these are not just sample purchase. This is something that I'll be wearing, and the fabric is super nice, and this will be the fabric we'll be using for the class. So if you're interested in that, I will leave the link below. And if you're watching this a little too late and you're like, darn, I wish I would have known, we'll act as if it's already happened. It was such a wonderful expo. We had tons of fun, and there were lots of amazing teachers and classes to take, so you should definitely go and check it out this year. Okay, now let's talk about the leg line itself. So I've given you a couple of tips here. We've talked about wearing tights underneath your leotard. If you can, that will always help. You can try the double stick tape, the hairspray on your booty. There is like body glue, it's called, but do be mindful that all of those options, you will possibly be adding a lot of residue that might be hard to get off of your costume. So if this is something you're going to want to rewear a lot, you might want to test how these things affect your actual garment and whether they work or not. I cannot say anything about it. I have not experienced this myself. But the other thing is to tighten the elastic more so in the back instead of just all the way around. Making that elastic smaller will also help. So the last thing I want to talk about is the pattern. You know, it's all about the pattern, is the pattern itself. Let's go over to the table. I know we're visual people. I want to show you actually what I'm talking about on the pattern, and I think it'll make a lot more sense. So this is the leotard pattern that we are going to use for the leotard class that I'm teaching. I'm not actually going to be talking about the leg elastics and all of that in that class per se for the one for Sew Expo, because this leotard class is called Leotard Launchpad because this is such a great base to make so many wonderful things. A leotard is, but this class will be teaching you how to put this all together with just a serger. It's a really quick technique, and we're going to be doing something a little different for the leg line. But this leotard pattern can be made in lots of different ways. So I wanted to share this particular tip and what I'm talking about with this pattern just because I had it ready. But if you look at this pattern actually gives you several options. Notice these are, yes, there's different sizes because this size option I made this for myself and I had to grade between two sizes. But she also on this pattern, and I will link her, she's off of Etsy. Her name is Ariana, the pattern that I used, but she gives you a lot of different options to where you can have a lower leg line or go more cheeky, you know, depending on what you're looking for. And this is the key. The leg line is the key. So you'll notice I went with a more kind of not so high leg line, and you'll see if I just went ahead and drew in my 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm gonna lay that on top of the other so I am not really worried about what's happening. We'll turn it this way so we can really focus. I'm not really worried about what's happening above that. Let's talk specifically about the leg line here. I'm just gonna put that so that I'm just focusing on that. So you can see this is a pretty shallow leg line. It's going to hit just above that crease where my leg attaches to my body, but you can see these other options go a lot higher. And then the corresponding lines, you know, you're getting less and less booty coverage. So that's part of the thing is a lot of times I see dancers and gymnasts where we've gotten those examples of where this is like riding up where we don't want it to, is that we have a really high leg line going up into the side. So I always learned when we were doing costuming is that is going to make it easier for this to ride up because there's nothing holding it down. So that's part of it. Now, the reason that they choose to do a high leg line and then why we choose to do it in performance wear as well is because it makes the leg itself look really long, right? Because if you have a higher leg line, it makes the whole leg look longer. And I don't know how much you know about gymnasts, but a lot of gymnasts are on the shorter side. It's easier to tumble, and so they want any extra leg that they can get. But in the shape of the pattern, you want to be careful. And something that we always learned, like notice how this goes up into the side seam. It goes up that high. When I learned to raise the leg, you're much more successful if you can go back down. So let's say I want to, and I'm gonna go ahead and draw with a marker. I can print this out again, but let's say I wanted to go up a little higher in the front, but instead of continuing it through the side seam and then going back down and losing my butt coverage, if you come back down to keep your booty coverage, it's still gonna likely want to ride up a little bit, but if you do this shape more forward and go back down and continue your booty coverage, and then you do that hugging elastic in the back, and then on top of it, you add tights, you're gonna be much more successful in not getting that leotard wedgie for your leotard. So it does come down to where that leg line is drawn on the pattern. I mean, the fabric is only gonna go where as much as it has, and it has stretch in it. So yes, that elastic could be hugging, but you know, if nothing's holding it down and it's being stretched taut, and then there's nothing holding it there except for the elastic, it will have a tendency to ride. So finding that perfect amount of fabric back here is a little bit tricky. I mean, it's something that we worked on and did different fittings with. We had synchronized swimmers, we had gymnasts, they were doing all kinds of crazy stuff. We've also had to make things like, you can choose to make your crotch wider as well. Like if you're doing a lot of splits or like lifting your leg really high, you want that coverage in that area, but it's a fine line between what's comfortable on the wearer and, you know, the amount of coverage that you're gonna get. So these are some options, but definitely like the shape of the leg line definitely comes into play, and how much you tighten this elastic in the back area. In the front, you don't need it to be tight. You just wanna hold that space and not have it stand away from the body. But in the booty, hug that bad boy in. Okay, so hopefully these tips will help you in the whole anti-leotard wedgie movement we are all in, right? We're all in that movement. Now, if you want it to, if they're designed, you want it to be cheeky, sexy, you know, that's the look you're going for, that Brazilian cut, then you don't want that extra elastic, because what you're gonna get is a double line. You know, you don't want it to be super tight there in the back. You want it to just control that fabric and lay nicely on the body. Then you don't have to do that hugging in. We are specifically talking about where we wish it would stay, where we are wanting it to cover the booty, but still give us that long line for the leg in the front. So it's finding that delicate balance, but hopefully these tips will help you keeping that leg elastic staying in place where you want it, whether it's for performance or gymnastics or just your average everyday, you know, you want to wear a bathing suit or a bodysuit. These can all be areas where you can use these tips, and hopefully they come in handy for you. If we haven't already had the expo and you want to join us for my Leotard Launchpad class or my Brief Brilliance, where I actually show you how to do this, I give you an estimate of how much elastic you want to take out and how to do that nice clean finish with just your sewing machine, nothing fancy, please go and check it out at sewexpo.com. I would love to hang out with you in person. I love meeting my students in person, and we're gonna have a blast. Again, if this is already passed and you know you've missed the expo, it was such a blast and such a great expo. You should really go and check it out for the coming years. I mean, lots of wonderful, I already know there's lots of wonderful classes, lots of wonderful teachers, and lots of great vendors and stuff. So I'm super excited to go. Now, if all of that is done and you're already going or it's already passed, and you are more interested in learning more about pattern making, which is my normal forte, please check out my free pattern masterclass. It's absolutely free. You can check it out down below in the link, and it's 3 video series. It teaches you my kind of different approach that I have to pattern making, which makes it really fun and easy, and everyone really seems to enjoy it. So that's what I'm all about, is making pattern making fun, sexy, and cool, because it totally is. Then check that out for free. And if you are all in, you are ready, you're like, sign me up, where do I start learning from you? We have Pattern Making Academy. You can check that out at learnpatternmaking.com. It's a very low monthly fee. Do it in your own time, pre-recorded videos. There is email and Facebook support, and you can cancel and pause at any time. So really, really low commitment, but you get to learn my fun and easy, fast way to making your own patterns and making them fit. That's all we have for you today here at Tricky Thursday on YouTube. I hope you will join us next time for our next Tricky Thursday tip. See you then.